Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from November 13th, 2020, and I'm recording this on May 14th, 2021. As always, I give those dates so that we know when this information is relevant because the comic market is moving really fast these days, so these prices are changing rapidly, but this still gives you a snapshot of what the comic books did for over a 6-month period. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. This week we got 18 comics to talk about, so a pretty good sized list. A lot of covers this week, but as always, we're looking at this to try to understand what made these books hot, what factors contributed to them staying hot or continuing to climb or crashing back down in price. So let's see what we can learn. First up, we have God of War #1. This book was on the list last week. Last week we were talking about it as a $40 to $50 book for a raw copy. Now it's by the second week on the list, it was up to an $80 book. Currently it's a $60 to $100 book, so pretty steady right in that same range in terms of what raw copies are going for. 9.8s are setting around $300 to $450, which is a pretty wide range. Mostly on the low end of that, the $300 to $350 range. But so far this one's been pretty steady. This had everything to do, like I said, with potential for a Netflix show. Don't know if that's actually going to happen anytime soon, but that's what put this book on everybody's radar. Popular game. And people are hoping to see a show, so that's what's got this book moving and staying pretty steady. Next, we have The Department of Truth #1. Rumors that it had been optioned 6 months ago. Raw copies were hitting $10. Now there's a $20 to $50 book. 9.8s, $175 to $200. And this may already be dated because I got these values a day or so ago, and then I saw today that it was on the list again, so may have jumped up some more. But anyway, it's definitely up from what it was when it hit the list 6 months ago. This has been a very popular series. There is a belief that a show for this is coming, so yeah. Next, we're moving into our covers. So we only had 2 option books this week into covers, and we have a ton of those to talk about this week. First up, we have Fantastic Four Antithesis #2, the Alex Ross Timeless variant with Silver Surfer on the cover. This also has a first appearance in it, but really this is about the Silver Surfer cover. Raw copies back then were going for $15, but 9.8s were hitting $200. So raw copies are still $15, $20 for this book, which is really good for, a raw book this new. But 9.8s, because a bunch of people got this slabbed, are down to $60 to $80 for 9.8, down from $200. So the 9.8 value has really crashed on this, even though the raw values have stayed steady. Next, we have The Last Ronin #1, the Stan Yak variant that was limited to 250 copies. Second week in a row, this hit the list. Last week we were talking about it was going for around 200. By this point, it was up to 275. And now it's a weird one. We talked about this last week. It's got a really wide range on the values on this. 150 to 450 for raw copies. 250 to 450 for 9.8. So I'm going to put this kind of in the steady, kind of worth it category because it was going for 200 plus, and it's still going that's kind of the center of the range that it's going for raw copies right now. So, but yeah, a cool Last Ronin book. This whole series has been very popular. Next, we have America #2. This is the Art Adams 1 in 50 variant. Popular cover that we know is coming, popular character we know is coming to the MCU. Had 9.8, so this hard to find. 1 in 50 going for $600 back then. There's only been 4 sales recently. 2 raw sales, 2 9.8 sales. Not very many of these listed. This is pretty tough to find. Raw copies have went for $450 and $600. 9.8s have went for $600 and $700. I'm going to call this one kind of steady, worth it in that range because of where the 9.8s are kind of in that same range. But not a lot of sales. This one's probably going to go for whatever people want to or willing to pay for it. Obviously, but I mean, like, they don't come up very often. People are jumping on them and going, just kind of willing to pay, not what somebody's asking, but almost, basically. Next, we have crossover number 1, the Alan Quay Virgin variant. Back then, raw copies of this were hitting $125. Now they're going for $140 to $180. 9.8s, though, are going for $150 to $300. So you can actually get a 9.8. A couple 9.8 sales were cheaper than a couple of the raw sales. But overall, this one is up and has definitely been worth it so far. So crossover, I think, has been a pretty popular series, although I don't think it hit quite as well as some people were anticipating, but enough that this particular variant is still doing really well on the secondary market. Next, we have Marked number 9. This is the Brian Haberlin Virgin variant. Raw copies of this back then were going $15 to $20. Now it's a $5 to $12 book. There's only been one 9.8 sale. It went for just under $80 at $78. So this one hasn't really sustained anything. I think not a series I've really heard anything about beyond this cover. So yeah, I don't think it's really built up enough of a following to keep this book going. That's why it's kind of dropped back down. Next, we have a cover that's a favorite of mine, just because I think it's a really cool cover, and that is Silver Surfer number 2. This Francisco Francavilla 1 in 50. There's several covers, particularly the ratios for this particular series, that are really good. This raw one, back then, raw copies of this were going for 100. 9.8 went for 300. Right now, there's been only 2 recent sales, 300 and 325 for 9.8, so that's pretty steady. The only other sale period was a 9.8 signed copy for 600. There's currently only one of these listed. This is a really tough book to find. My guess is, I'm surprised it actually doesn't go for more, really, but just given how hard it is to find. But it's definitely going for really good value and been pretty steady when it does sell. So next we have Champions number 1, the Walmart variant. This one was going for $15 to $20 at release. Now it's a $5 to $10 book. The one 9.8 sale was only for $35. These Walmart books, people jump on them. They think they're going to be hard to find, and then they're not. And they really just, for the most part, have not sustained value. Like probably 90% of the Walmart books just come crashing back down. I would, if you can get one, great. If not, I would be super patient on Walmart books generally, because they really ultimately tend not to be that hard to get. Next, we have Champions number 2, the Megan Hetrick 1 in 25. This one was going for $35, $40 out the gate after being released. Now, the only sale, which was back in early April, was for $30. Lots of them are listed right at $30, but nobody's really willing to pay that, so this is definitely down. People aren't really chasing this particular variant very much. 2 more covers to go. And we have Savage Dragon number 253. This is the Eric Larson's political election variant. He does this every so often. Back then, right after the election, this was going for $15 to $30. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. 9.8s go for $50 to $80. So this one's down. Not a ton of interest. I don't care about your politics. Please do not comment politics-wise about this cover in the chat. I will delete them. I'm just reporting what the book has done. So I didn't put it on the list. And so there you go. And I just don't want to hear it, whatever your side is. And finally, our last cover of the week is X-Men X of Swords Creation number 1, another Walmart variant. This one was going 15 to 30, and now it's 5 to 15. 9.8s went everywhere from $25 to $100. This is a wraparound cover, but I don't know. It's not that I don't sure why people were jumping on this one, but they did at the time. Another one of those Walmart variants that just did not hold any kind of value. With that, we're actually going to move into other stuff away from just covers. First up, we have one Star Wars book this week, and that is Star Wars Darth Vader number 3. First appearance of Dr. Aphra. This thing has been on and off the list a ton of times over the last couple years. Back then, it was hitting $75 for raw copies again. 9.8s were up to $275. Now it's a $100 to $200 book for a raw copy. 9.8s will go $450 to $500. So this one is up. There's still rumors basically that she is going to get a show, that she is going to be cast either in The Mandalorian or get her own show or something. I believe they will use this character at some point, and this book has continued to climb in value because of it. Next, we have Dark Hawk #1, and this is pure spec because Marvel had trademarked the Dark Hawk name for a couple of websites and stuff, which is, making sure they have those locked down for if they decide to do a movie or some sort of project. That caused this 90s book to jump up to $20 for raw copy. 9.8s were hitting $200 to $250. Now raw copies are basically in that same range, 15 to 30. 9.8s have crept up a little higher, 275, 325, but there's very few of those sales. The vast majority are just raw copies. So I kept this as pretty steady in terms of thinking about how this one broke down. With that, we got 4 books left. Next up, we have Punisher #1 from 1987, his first ongoing series. This hit the list because Marvel was getting the rights back to the Netflix characters, Daredevil, Punisher. So people were starting to spec on this book because his actual first appearance, his actual second appearance, even his first solo title were getting super expensive. Back then, this jumped up to a $15 book. 9.8s were going for $120. Now it's a $15 to $30 book, but 9.8s have actually continued to climb. It's $200 to $300 for 9.8 of this book now. So this one, it's a Punisher. People love this character. Gonna continue to climb. I will say the most recent 9.8 sale actually jumped all the way up to $400, but seems to be a bit of an outlier. So won't mention it, but not really the price just yet of where this is going. Next, more MCU pure spec, which is like these last two, which is Spawn #9. First appearance of Angela. Rumors that maybe she was going to make an appearance in Love and Thunder. Raw copies were going for $10 to $15. 9.8's going for $100. Mind you, I'm talking about the direct, not the newsstand. Newsstands go for significantly more. Raw copies now are $10 to $25. 9.8's $150 to $200. Although the most recent sale again was all the way up to $280. So this one's up. I would say this is pretty worth it. If you could get in a really nice copy, a potential 9.8 for $20, $30, hey, you're doing pretty good on potentially turning that if she does show up. But don't know yet what the odds are going to be that she will. Last 2 books this week are actually DC spec. First up, we have Teen Titans Annual #2. First appearance of Vigilante in costume. And this is what hit the list because the character was cast for the Peacemaker show. So it didn't turn out to be Idris Elba in the Suicide Squad movie, but it does look like the character is going to be a part of the Peacemaker show. Raw copies were hitting $25. 9.8 were going for $180. And there's still, raw copies are $10 to $30, 9.8 $150 to $200. So this has been super steady over the last 6 months, sitting right in that same range. We know this character's coming. We know this show's coming. So it hasn't jumped any further, but it's definitely still sitting right there where it was at. And then last book of the week is New Teen Titans #23. And this kind of was a double whammy. It has the first appearance of Adrian Chase, who becomes Vigilante, before he's Vigilante. So yeah. But it also has the first appearance of Blackfire. So in addition to Vigilante coming to the Peacemaker show, we found out Blackfire was going to be a part of the Teen Titans show. So raw copies were going for $10 to $15, 9.8s were hitting $100. Now they're going $10 to $30 for a raw copy, 9.8s $125 to $200. So this one's crept up a little bit and continued to climb. I've always thought this was a little bit of an underrated book anyway in terms of the Teen Titans books. Blackfire is a very kind of important villain character, at least for Starfire. So yeah, glad to see this book get a little love. So that was this week's list. As you can see, we had several books that went up. Actually, we kind of a really well-balanced list, as I'll show you in a second when I do my summary slide. We actually had 6 books go up, 6 books stay steady, and 6 books drop in value. So kind of an interesting week. We don't see that very often, but I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.